Good afternoon, or evening. It doesn't feel like an evening, does it?
No.
No.
Hello, hi Rob. How are you, Robert? How are you? I think there's five other people with Rob. Um,
Hi, yeah. Sorry, we're a little bit late. I'm with my colleague Christine.
Hi, Christine.
We've just been dealing with a road traffic accident, and then we didn't realise it was just online because we went to two different places. So apologies for
Oh,
being.
bless you. No, it's fine. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad you're here to join us. We're just admitting all of our guests currently. We've just met as panelists, so we will pose some questions addressed to that we would like possibly to know from the police and stuff. But yeah, we'll introduce ourselves in a minute once everybody has sort of like admitted, and we'll start the session. So you're not late at all. You're right on time.
That's good. Thank you. I mean, if there's certain questions we can't answer, we'll just be honest and say we'll get back
Absolutely.
to you.
It's not a problem at all. I'll be doing the same. So yeah, so not to worry at all. If there's anything that we're not able to address today, we'll certainly have a follow-up. Yeah, so I've got the task. My name is Rumbi. I'm one of the mentors and the founder of African Youth Arise. My role today, I am going to be talking a little bit about the project that we've embarked on, but also at the same time, I'm going to be the admin for the room. So I'll be busy sort of watching the messages or the chat function. If you do have any questions, you can post them on there. So at the moment, I'm just like admitting all of our guests. We'll just give probably another minute, and then we'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I'll introduce you to our facilitator for the day, who's Dalitso, and then I'll carry on doing the admin. It would be great if everybody can just introduce themselves in the chat, and we would love to hear where you are joining from. So if you just find a messaging icon, tell us who you are, and sort of like tell us who you are, why you're interested in this subject particularly, and where you're joining from. It will be really interesting for us to see where people are joining from. So we'll just do that in the next couple of minutes while you're waiting for the rest of the guests to join.
Hey.
Hello, Linda. How are you? You're on mute. Linda, you're on mute. You are on mute, Linda. You're speaking, but you're on mute currently. I think Linda wants to say something, but she's put herself on mute.
I think it's her network because she's a bit fuzzy as well.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Okay. So Diana has got her hand raised. Hi, Diana.
Hi, who's it, Rumbi?
It's Rumbi, yes.
Okay, hi, Rumbi. Yeah, I'm Diana Elisha Nera. I'm in Harare in Zimbabwe.
Oh, fantastic.
Quite interested because I'm a media for HR, best interest of the child movement, which is based.
Oh, that's really interesting. We've got people reaching us, joining us from far and wide, really. So I was talking to the panelists earlier in our earlier discussion, and I was just saying that there's a lot of people who are really looking forward to joining the discussion. And I had someone earlier actually joining in at 5 o'clock because they're in Zimbabwe and they thought it was already 6. So I had to say, can you come and join at 6 UK time? So I think it shows the importance of having this or of us having this discussion, and it's how it's much needed for us to move this discussion forward. So we're really excited, and we don't take it for granted that it's sunny outside. People could be in the pub. You know how it is in the UK, we don't get a lot of sun. So when the sun is out, people have got other things to do. But I'm really pleased that you have decided to join us in this discussion. So I'm gonna stick to time in terms of, I did say 3 minutes. If you can just use the chat to sort of communicate with us, I'll be watching closely. Any comments or any questions. But as I said, we are going to continue with the discussion. So first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Rumbi Potter. I am the founder and one of the mentors. I think there's quite a few of us mentors. I think I've got Salome as well, who's joined, who's one of the mentors at African Youth Arise, and I've got Dalitso. I think more mentors will be joining. And my role today, I'm going to be doing sort of like the background work in terms of admitting all the guests that want to join the conversation, but also at the same time to talk a little bit about Aya, what we do and why we do what we do. And then I'll get into why we are exploring the sexual health project, especially with parents. So what is Aya? Aya is a very small charity that is based in Northamptonshire. What it looks to do is to empower, enhance, enrich, and enable young people of African descent that are based in the UK. So some of the locals, I guess, might be surprised why some people from far and wide are joining. It's because I think it's been shared. The flyer has been shared widely, and it's a good thing that we now live in a global community that other people from other parts of the world are able to join. And really, one of the things that we do at Aya is we like to be very proactive. And one of the things we decided this year that we wanted to focus on was sexual health. But what we understand from our community, sexual health is a very much of a taboo subject. And we wanted to find a way to explore the subject without causing too much confusion amongst families, I guess. So we wanted to really have this discussion with parents first, prior to us actually exploring the subject with young people. Because what we tend to find when we explore certain subjects within Aya, young people will go to their families or to their parents, their guardians, and they would want to explore the subject further. So we didn't want the parents to be ill prepared for when the young people have this discussion. And really, like, my personal passion is that when I grew up, sexual health, I think I didn't start really learning about sexual health up until I was an adult, which is such a shame, really. And for me, I just thought it's just important for us to be in control of the narrative that we want our young people to learn about sexual health. One of the panelists was talking to me earlier and said that actually young people are learning about sexual health through pornography, which is not the best form or source of learning that we would want young people to learn from. So we decided that at African Youth Arise, we're going to be proactive. We're going to bring the expertise that understand sort of like the cultural sensitivities around the subject. We're not taking away the fact that there aren't any challenges, there aren't any taboos, but actually we really want to have this discussion to enable us actually to move forward, not to shy away from that subject. So with me today, I think I've got about 5 panelists. I'm gonna let Dalitso will be facilitating the discussion. As I said, I'll be in the background, admitting people, sort of like checking all the questions that you may have and addressing them with Dalitso. But what I'm just gonna ask in terms of if you are a guest, if you can, all the guests and the panelists, if you can mute yourself while you're not speaking, ask as many questions as you like on the chat. What we'll do at the end of the panel discussion, we will ask the panelists to answer all the questions that you've answered. I'm now going to hand you over. We are here actually. We're going to be having this discussion from now up until 8:30. So I'm really glad that a lot of you have joined this discussion. I'm now going to hand it over to Dalitso, who's going to be facilitating the discussion tonight. Over to you, Dalitso.
Thanks, Rumbi. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our sexual health panel that, as Rumbi said, is hosted by African Youth Arise. My name is Dalitso, and I have experience supporting survivors of sexual violence through the criminal justice system. And I now work in legislation, so influencing governmental legislation around online safety, particularly around protecting young people's exposure to explicit content like pornography on social media and pornography websites. I also do some consultancy work around violence against women and girls. So I've done work with the University of Liverpool, Rape Crisis, and like an organisation with Lady Talk, just about operations and making sure that their work is culturally sensitive when it comes to supporting victims, particularly. So I feel like this is a very timely subject. I feel like recently a lot of people have been talking about this, particularly as a result of adolescence that came up on Netflix, and how our young people's interaction with social media and the internet is impacting them. So like Rumbi said, it's a safe space. I know sexual health is quite taboo in our community, but there's no question that's silly or any question that won't be answered. So feel free to ask as many questions as you can in the chat section. The point of today is to have an open discussion so that we can all learn and also be able to better support our young people within the community. So we have 5 panelists today. I'm just going to give them each a moment to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Pastor Nick Dube, who wants to just take a minute to introduce who he is.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you to Rumbi, thank you to Aya and the leadership and all the panelists and everyone who's joined us today. My name is Nick Dube. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. My background has been, I grew up in church leadership and especially working with young people in the church. I've trained in leadership. About 10 years ago, I will add that to the brief intro. I think me and my wife stayed in Wales, in Abergavenny in Wales, and during a certain week, there were about 8 or 9 suicides online by young people getting in and communicating to each other and sort of committing suicide. And that troubled me, and I was in the church. And I began to meet with young people in the church and really get into the depth of what they were dealing with and some of the challenges and the issues that they were struggling with. And it really troubled me. How come the community, the church, the parents are not able to, address these things? And so I've worked with mayors, councils in Slough and some of the surrounding areas, just sitting on various sort of meetings, communicating around mental health, about some of the struggles and trying to engage the church in some of these things. My qualifications are in mentoring, in coaching, in psychology, and in counseling. And yeah, I'm excited to lend a voice here and to learn and for us to really advance this topic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Now pass on to Barbara, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Mufaro-Makunde. I'm a registered nurse, a registered midwife. I've got a master's in public health, and I'm currently working as a clinical governance manager within the health sector. And I also specialize in teenage pregnancy and mental health in pregnancy. So that's me in short. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Rue, also known as Menstrualbae.
Hello everyone. I am Ruvimbo. Everyone calls me Rue. On social media, I'm known as Menstrualbae. So I talk about a topic that I couldn't talk about with my mom or my grandma. So I am making period conversations the norm in our community. I'm also a public health practitioner. I am a student nurse as well as a founder of a women's health charity called Her Pure Joy Foundation. So that's tackling period poverty both in the UK and in Zimbabwe, and also educating on sexual health and menstrual health. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tammy?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rumbi, Aya, and everybody who's here. I think many people know me by Mufaro. One of the things that I love is talking about what we call uncomfortable discussions. So this is one of them, which I love. And one of the things that I'm well known for is if you're here and you think you are shy, or there are some discussions that you can't have, I know that it touched on those. I've had, discussions where people have walked out because they can't sit and listen to that. I think as parents, we need to come to a point where there isn't anything that is taboo. We can talk about anything. My background is social work. So I've had lots of experience within the social services. We are talking of child sexual exploitation, the dilemmas that comes as well with our own parenting, where we are coming, the cultural aspect, and the impact that that comes with that. Some of the things you don't realize that there's an impact on the child. My focus is the impact on the child up to adulthood, because when a child has been impacted as a child, then we see them as well as parents. They then struggle as parents. So I work along the spectrum. So my background is that within, and also the family courts. I can't tell you my position. I'm very protected, but yeah, I'm in the family courts as well. So that's my role. But yeah, welcome everybody. I'm looking forward to having uncomfortable discussions.
Thank you so much, Tammy. I think last but not least, we also have the police present. I think we've got Rob and Christine from Northamptonshire Police in Kettering. I don't know if you just want to briefly introduce yourselves as well.
Yeah, obviously I'm Christine, and my colleague Rob. We've worked for Northamptonshire Police now for about 18 years. We've dealt and seen with a lot of child exploitation, sort of county lines, missing people, things advertised on social media where children have shared sexual images of themselves, etc. So we've dealt with a lot of incidents, even children witnessing domestic abuse and violence, etc., at home or for their siblings. So it has a major impact on the families and whatever with regards to their choices. And as children as well, maybe that have just moved to a different country, or a single parent, or are a bit inwards with themselves and don't make friends quite easily. Certain children are open to be preyed upon by others, the criminal aspects in society that will take advantage of them. So we're here just representing the police. So if there's any questions with regards to county lines or anything you'd like to ask us, we'll try and answer them questions for you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Rob, were you going to say something?
Sorry?
I thought you were going to say something, no worries.
No, I was just going to say to my colleague, well said. I think she's basically covered all bases that what we cover. I'd like to say we're in the police. You have specialist departments which look after child exploitation and violence against women and girls. So if there's any questions in that area that we can't answer, we can go to those specialist departments and say, this is the question, can you help us out? And then we can also get back to you guys and let you know. All right.
Okay, thank you so much. So as Rumbi said earlier, so that's our panel. We're going to start the discussion soon, but just a reminder, if anyone's got any questions, please put them in the chat section. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end, but we'll probably touch on some of your questions as we go along as well. If everyone can stay muted if you're not speaking, just so that's a smoother discussion as we go along. So just for the panelists, why have you agreed to talk about what's seen as such a taboo topic in our community? As Tammy said, it's an uncomfortable conversation.
I think I'll go first. For myself, so I was born in Zimbabwe, but most of my life I was raised in the UK. So there was like a culture shift, especially with my parents. There were things that I feel I couldn't talk to them. I'm now 27, and it's only now that we can talk about these things. But amongst my friends, it's not a great idea to learn from another child about things that pertain to your safety and your body and those things. So I don't want another young girl to go through some of the things that I didn't know about, and they don't know the questions or the answers because they're scared or because it's not the norm to go to your African mum or whatever to talk about these things. So I think culture is a huge factor of why I am present in this workshop. And I think at times culture does sort of, I guess, it makes things difficult at times because people don't want to be loud about the topics that should be loud. And things are just sometimes seem to be put under the rug because all in the name of culture or religion. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think Tammy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, for me, I think I said it when I started. I'll give my background because I was raised in Zimbabwe. In the village, there were some cultural practices that we did that as a child, you didn't question, but I was always, against others. But we are talking things like Donza Matinji. I will say that in my language. I'm not sure what in terms of the English language, the pulling of the labia. That's where we are starting from. So those are the things that where we started from. I was in the village. I was seeing that happening to many young people as young as 9. They say once a girl starts getting, breasts, you have to start doing that. So I watched girls doing that. For me, the sexual, a grooming when I start talking about that. And there were also some cultural practices that we are talking about, like the Chiramu things. I also experienced them. And then I moved on to the city in my secondary year. Again, I was in an environment where it was a girls' school. We didn't understand child sexual exploitation. So I must say, when I went to school, it was all right. You would see what we called sugar daddies, and young people dating teachers, dating, even in the village. By the time I finished my grade 7, half of the class were married. So, I came from that background. And when I moved to the UK, I then went into social work. I've always wanted to do social work. And as well, I've seen these things, within my community, there are things that people don't understand. Just as much as I work in social services, I've also got experience of working with those that are transitioning into the country, and I do some workshops around life in the UK. So it's a subject that I've noticed that even parents themselves, they don't understand when we're talking of consent and trying to marry that with our culture where we are coming from. I think it can be difficult for people to try and say, this is the, you need consent for this. And they're like, but you came to my house, and I've again experienced a lot of sexual exploitation and worked with parents that wouldn't understand in terms of how do you protect your child. I've got teenagers, I'm raising teenagers as well. Having those discussions as a young person, I never got the chance to have those discussions. So I'm very passionate about this. I've written a lot of topics on my social media, talking, trying to engage people to talk about some of those topics. So that's why I'm here today. I'm here to learn from others. I'm here to share my experiences. I'm here also to just think about how we can, as a community, have these discussions and help each other.
Thank you. I don't know, Barbara or Pastor Nick. Wait, who's to go next?
I'll go. I mean, for me, 2015, when I began to talk to young people, I realized that my heart and my passion, which brings me here, was to bridge the gap between the church or parents in the church, because most parents, especially from the African community, are influenced by church, or they come from a belief or a Christianity background. But I realized when I began to talk to young people that while the parents were worshiping, their children were being groomed, their children were being exposed to pornography. And in most cases, I dealt with a case where when a young person was being groomed by a gang and introduced to drugs, the parents reacted by almost like beating up the child or reacting, those violence, almost not knowing how to sort of like help him navigate all those things. And so that was my passion. How do we bridge the gap between, and using our faith, our values, our Christianity, but also address the issues young people are dealing with practically, so that they can know how to navigate in the real world that they are living in. And like I said, there was almost like this gap that parents are involved in church, but young people are busy struggling and dealing with all sorts of things. And so it was to talk about it, communicate about it. And it led me to write a book in 2015, which everybody laughed at the time, that was said, No One Understands Me, the cry of every teenager. And it was to communicate that your young people are crying out. When they come back from school, don't just ask, how was school? What grades did you get? You need to get inside. How are you doing? Because in those environments, they are being bullied. They are going through a lot. They're being coerced into gangs, into sex, and into a whole lot of things. So it was to help parents ask the right questions, be holistic in their approach, use faith, use their education, use their culture, but be holistic in their approach in helping young people grow up to responsible adults.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Barbara? Sorry, you're on mute.
I have to be reminded every time. Sorry about that. Yeah, so where I'm coming in from is my midwifery background, and my background as a public health specialist, and my background is a teenage pregnancy midwife as well. And my exposure within that role, myself being a mother of 4 as well, all my kids are now adults, all born in the UK. So we've had to navigate. So I had to navigate raising children in the UK, teaching them from my experience as a midwife as well. So what I find as a midwife, I should say, the youngest child I delivered was actually 12 years old. Yes, and the boy was also 12. So you can see that we have kids in the house, and we're thinking we're living with children. And so what's happening is that when we shy away from these topics, the world is out there teaching the children for us. So I think those hard and difficult conversations, they cannot come better, from anyone better than the parent. We just need to break those barriers and be talking openly with our children And you'll be surprised, I must admit myself with my older kids. My oldest is 28, and I used to when they used to be taught sexual education, I'll make them miss school because I was like, my child doesn't know about these things, so why are you introducing this information in their head? But what I realized is that when I pull them out of the class at break time, the little ones will now teach from whatever they think they've grasped from the lesson, whether correct or wrong. They now feed my child with the wrong information. So I then, resolved to just letting my kids attend these lessons. And, when they come home, and the schools are very good, they can share the content with you. And when they come home, having that conversation to say, okay, so what did they teach you? Then as a parent, we have our own, in our own house, everyone has got their own values. We have to respect that, their own background. So from that, we start teaching to say, okay, all right, this is what they've taught you. All right. So in a way of trying to keep them as children, but not removing them from the teachings that they would be getting from school, because there is a curriculum. But at the same time, if you do not let them tell you what they're being taught, the world will teach them for you. Our kids, they're very clever. They could have gadgets and you think you have all the platforms, you can see all the platforms, but they've learned ways of bypassing us. So they'll still learn. They're many years ahead of us. We're saying technology, but they're beyond technology, these kids of ours. So it's very important. So I had written something down because I know from 3 to 8 years old, there is something for them to learn for that age to keep them safe. Because if you don't teach them, they can also be abused as well, as young as they are. So there is the 9 to 12 as well. We have the 13th to 18th. Every stage has got something that is appropriate for them to learn from the sexual health aspect. So I will stop from there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Barbara. And I think from what everyone has said, there's sort of that thing of culture and religion plays such a big part in how we talk about sexual health in the African community. I think something that Barbara's literally said is the world is teaching our children if we don't. And I think you think about particularly statistics actually show that children as young as 7 are using pornography to educate themselves on sexual health. And also when you think about menstruation, like the age in which young girls are starting to menstruate is getting younger and younger. So if we don't educate them, they will go to some other place to learn. And, I think something I see a lot nowadays is TikTok is, someone as young as 5 can access TikTok, but stuff like TikTok and Twitter and Facebook, you can actually access pornography on there without any age verification whatsoever. I think I was going to go back to Barbara particularly, like what's some of the trends that you're seeing in your area of work, particularly when it comes to our community?
What I do find that there is higher teenage pregnancy within the BME community, Black African, mixed ethnic groups. It is higher, and I think they kind of it depends on the postcode as well, because it also sometimes some of these things it also comes back to government, unfortunately, where it depends on what funding is in that area for children or young people to have accessible education, these extra sessions. So you'd find certain postcodes, they would have these statistics there, they're quite low, but in the London region, that's very high. You talk of Birmingham, it's also high. So it's very high in the cities because that's where the ethnic minorities are also very populated, and especially from the Black Afro-Caribbean backgrounds. I don't know if I've answered you.
No, you have. I think it got me. I think Rue, you've got your hand up. I was actually going to ask you a question next, just in relation to the fact that menstruation starts younger and younger. Like, what are you seeing with the education that you're doing with young people, particularly in the community?
So far study is showing that the youngest is now starting from the age of 8, but I'm pretty sure age is going lower. And then, sorry, what was the other part I didn't catch?
So I guess in relation to, particularly with young people, where do you feel like they're learning about about their menstruation health if parents are not talking about it?
Oh, okay. I think from friends, people are not comfortable, or should I say, young girls when they start, they're not comfortable to tell their mom usually, but usually the school nurse comes to school and talks about periods. The unfortunate thing is that the school nurse does not like generalize periods. There's no explanation on the further things that can affect a girl when it comes to periods. There's things like the topic of heavy period, which is called dysmenorrhea, and there's 2 types. So everyone is going to have a period pain, but there's a secondary part where there are some people who now experience conditions like adenomyosis, endometriosis, PCOS, fibroids. That's now the secondary, but they don't talk about that thing, and that's why it then goes to the GPs, and then that's why there's a delay in deferrals and dismissals, because you're usually just told to keep a brave face because it happens to everyone. But the truth is, there's a certain number of people that are struggling and that will continue to struggle. But the only thing I can say is, if it's not happening at home, it's definitely happening amongst friends that don't know much about what's happening to their body. They probably just also learned from another person. And social media is the dictionary of your children. That is the dictionary of your children. And the more we basically accept that, I think it must force you to talk about the things that you don't want to talk about because it's such a taboo. There is nothing wrong with starting a little conversation on things like consent, knowing the difference between yes and no, and knowing the difference is, if you have said no, you can change your mind, and if you have said yes, you can also change your mind. It starts as small as that, and it's also not even on a thing where like, oh, they're too young. Consent can start when the child is 3 years old. They should know what yes means. They should know what no means. And if mom has said no, it means no. If mom has said yes, it means yes. You don't have to make it complicated. And maybe you're now thinking, oh yeah, maybe I should talk. Because sometimes I think parents think when it comes to consent, it's now sexual talk, a conversation, and that's not it. It's just a general conversation. If you have said you're not having a biscuit, that means it's a no. You can just put it in those things if you're talking to like a 3-year-old. And then if they're now a 13-year-old, that means you talk about, you give an example or bringing a conversation that now can impact this 13-year-old because of where their age groups are and the things that they're now being, sussing out in the environment, in their friendship groups. So I think it's just a matter of guiding parents, and I guess this is why this talk is happening, guiding parents away from the fear of talking about sex, talking about consent, talking about periods, because most of the times, in terms of our community, there is a little bit of grace that I also hold. I think our parents did not have anywhere to learn it from, and it's now passed down to them. So it's just more of a way of just creating rooms like this, creating some guides. I mean, I have guides for dads to talk about periods with their girls. It's quite a simple conversation, which is meaningful because a period can happen when mum is at work, and maybe mum is not even around at all, but dad still is present and he needs to talk about those things. But yeah, I feel like I've said a lot there, but thank you.
No, thank you so much. And I think something that's quite important to note is, obviously with menstruation means that a young girl can get pregnant. So I feel like if we're not having those conversations, this is when we're seeing young girls end up in situations where they get pregnant at such a young age because they don't understand the link between sex and the menstruation cycle. And it's quite a dangerous space to be in. I think, thank you so much for touching on consent. I feel like that's also something in our community that we don't normally talk about consent, and something we're seeing quite a lot is we have a lot of young men particularly migrating from, you know, Africa to the UK, who've ended up in loads of situations where they can sexual violence, because for them, you know, consent is not a thing. But consent starts, like she said, from age 3. It can be as simple as, you know, we think about grooming young children. It can be as simple as the uncle that, you know, every time he comes to visit, come and sit on my lap. And if your daughter's not comfortable with that, you're like, oh, it's just uncle. But giving them the voice to know, you know, I can say no, I can say yes, gives them the power to be able to differentiate what's abuse and what isn't as well. So thank you so much for that, Rue. I can see a lot of hands are going up. So like I said earlier, we will have a Q&A session after the panel. But if you want to put your questions in the chat section, then I'll be able to go through them at the end. But I can see all your hands. I'm not ignoring you on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely, Dalitso. I was going to say the same thing. I think I've also gathered that there are a lot of expertise in the room and stuff. So we will, if you do have expertise, please share with us in the chat. We will definitely, this discussion is going to go on, this project is actually going on for 2 years. So this is only the beginning. And today we are only scratching the surface, if that. So if you really have something to say, please put it in the chat. We're going to continue and move forward the discussion. And absolutely, we will reach out to you if you've got certain expertise that you think we should be exploring as well as part of this discussion. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rumbi. I think Barbara, you had something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, coming from where Menstrualbae has just come out. That's the name I can see there. Yeah, you know, you touched on the point that, you know, young girls, sometimes they don't even know that you don't necessarily need their period to have a period first. You can get pregnant. There is also another side of it where young people, they feel inferior, they feel bullied when they see their peers, you know, developing into puberty, but, you know, they're taking time, they don't see changes within themselves. So these conversations also need to take place from, you know, us as parents need to also talk about these things to know that, you know, body changes are normal, but it also happens at everyone grows at their own pace as well. Because I went to boarding school, and I remember, you know, those things were very apparent, and you could see some people would end up being embarrassed to dress in front of the others because we were all, you know, developing differently. So these conversations need to take place as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I want to bring in Tammy and Pastor Nick. I'm just thinking about, like we've said, about the topic of consent. When you think about Tammy, you talked about, you learned about sexual health, you know, growing up in the village, and Pastor Nick, from your religious perspective. How do we talk about consent without feeling like we're encouraging sex? I think that's the biggest concern that parents have. And I know Rue mentioned, you know, you need to start talking about from age 3. And Barbara, you also mentioned how, you know, for you, when your children had sexual health education at school, you told them to stay at home. So I guess from your two perspectives, I just want to bring you into the conversation. Like, how do we have those conversations?
Yeah, I will start. These conversations, like I said, these are what we call uncomfortable, you know, conversations. But we also need to recognize where people are coming from. So I love human behavior. And in terms of how we behave as adults, we are influenced by how we are raised. So as somebody, I was raised in the village, I was raised in Zimbabwe, I came here as an adult. And when those discussions, to then start having those discussions with my children, it was really difficult because as a parent, I'm not quite equipped to talk about this. So culturally, if you're raised, let's say, I'll give an example in Zimbabwe, how people view consent is different to how consent can be viewed in the UK. I'm not saying the laws are different. The laws are the same, but probably in Zimbabwe, things have been left, they've been normalized, some of the things, such that even to talk to children about that consent, us as parents, we don't see anything wrong with what we are. You know, when you're saying consent, when you're saying, if a girlfriend, so I'll give an example. Somebody came to the UK as an international student, invited a girlfriend to their room after they went out, had sex throughout whatever. She then woke up, she was intoxicated, and said in the morning that she was raped. In our cultural context where we are coming from, sometimes it's, you came to my room. What were you coming to do? And it's normalized with, even when I started talking about that on my social media, I could see many men really finding it difficult to say you have to get consent. For them, it's normal. If you come to my house, I've invited, or you agree to come to my house, definitely we are going to have it. It's like, why have you come? Or if we are married, or if we are in a partnership, we are dating, it's expected that it comes with that. So the topic itself of consent can be difficult for us parents, as African parents, because it's a topic that's really difficult to switch in terms of our thinking, in terms of how then do we talk to our children when we ourselves can't even think about that. So what I would advise parents is to be aware of what consent is about in the UK. We are raising our children in the UK. Let's read about it. Let's understand. Let's reflect on our cultural context against where we are now, and how then, you know, when we are then talking about it. Yes, I've heard many people, many parents say, oh, once we start allowing children to learn about sexual health, we are putting the, what do you call it? We are like putting the mindset that they can start having it. But I always talk about risk. Every child, as they grow up, they take risks. So if you don't allow them to take risks, then it's going to be difficult, because you can't manage when you are not recognizing the risks. So having those discussions, it's very, very important to be open and start talking about those things. When they've started learning at school, follow up at home. I think Menstrualbae, you talked about it. Read about it at school. As a parent at home, start talking about it. Your child gets into menstruation, start, you know, at that point, open the discussions. Yes, this is what is, these are the changes that are happening to your body now. If you do this, this is what is going to happen. Have open discussions. Again, as African parents, sometimes we are closed. Our children can't come to us. They are so scared to talk to us. So we need to make it clear to our children that it's okay to talk about those things. In this house, you can talk about anything. So, you know, if you're worried about anything, if there's anything that you need to, you know, to approach me about, let's talk about it. And also, you know, we need resources to be able to signpost our children. And I think that's where I'm really passionate about. It's the parents themselves, because if we don't empower parents, then we can't talk about it. We can't empower our children. Those discussions will never happen, because we've got no knowledge. We are not equipped to talk about it. So as parents ourselves, we need to have those discussions. In churches, we need to have those discussions. In my role, I've gone to, you know, to some people's houses, and they've told me that we can't talk about that because you come from our culture. You know that we can't talk about that. And I'll say it's high time you start talking about it, because if you don't, then this subject will be talked about elsewhere. Yes, the Bible, this is what the Bible, because they always quote me with the Bible. This is what the Bible says, abstinence. There's no way you can start talking about consent. They are not yet ready to be married. And I'm like, reality is they will do it at times. So let's talk about it. Because if then you ignore it, you're saying it doesn't happen, but it does happen. So let's talk about it. So that's what I would encourage, us as African parents to start looking at and educating ourselves, and then having the discussions from a knowledge base.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'll just carry on now, because you had mentioned myself as well. So I'll just jump in straight away from where Tammy has left. I grew up in Zimbabwe just like Tammy, and I can resonate with what you've just said. But I think what has helped me myself is the fact that I'm in the midwifery background. It's very easy. It's an everyday language. But I think I find it easier to talk about it when I'm talking in English, because I dare not speak these words in my language. Very easy for me to repeat in English. So that has been the saving grace for me. And with my children, I think, because I'll talk as a midwife and I'll talk as a mother as well, is when you do find nicknames for these, private parts, it's very easy to talk about it. For me, I can see she's shaking her head, but maybe, we're here to share. But that's what has worked for me. If I feel like they were not the right words, but for our environment in the house, that's what has worked for us. But you can speak after me so that we can just erase that thought in the early stages. Yeah. So you pointed, Dalitso, about the fact that I mentioned the 3 years. From 3 years, we can be teaching the children. Honestly, like the curriculum or the content that we teach them would be different, but it's important for them to start knowing simple things. They have to know, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, right? There is what we call private parts. They are private for a reason. It's a do not touch. So already you're bringing in the safeguarding into it. You're teaching children to safeguard themselves, and they know that it's okay to say no to being touched inappropriately. This is the type of content, knowing about safe touches and unsafe touches, and to reassure that they should not feel threatened by these empty threats, like you cannot tell your mom this because I'll kill your father, I'll kill this, because those are when you read these stories, this is the usual thing you'd hear, that, oh, they told me if I tell someone they'll do this. So we need to start reassuring them and hammering this at a very young age to say those are empty threats. Still tell a trusted adult. And they need to know that that's a 3-year-old to an 8-year-old. Their body belongs to them, and they should always tell a trusted adult if it feels wrong, whatever they've been taught, something is happening differently, and just to know that it's okay to be touched on the shoulder, but there are certain no-go areas. So this is the content for a 3 to 8-year-old, and I think it's a safe content. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I think Rue wanted to go. I have a feeling why you were shaking your head, but I'll let you speak.
So I like what Barbara was saying, because obviously she said that's what's been working for her household and stuff. So I'm not going to discredit the efforts that she's put through. The thing I've learned, and that when you give pet names to these private parts, if something is to happen, they may not. How can I explain it? If you call,
we've dealt with it in safeguarding, where a child can't, they're describing some things, we can't understand what they're trying to say, and because it's a pet name they're using.
Yes.
Fair point.
If you give a pet name to the vagina and call it, I don't know, a flower, it also kind of makes it look like it's a secret or it's a shameful thing. So important to just call it exactly what it is, for the sake of just making sure that they're safe at all times. And the fact that you said that there needs to be comfortable, not just comfortability, but they need to be also be in an environment where they feel safe to share with an adult. An adult knows what a vagina is. But now if, I don't know, if they go to their auntie, but mom calls it a flower, so now, yeah, auntie might not know what a flower is exactly. So I think it's important to when you're ready to move to the big words, Barbara, I think you'll be fine. But as long as it's
I'm absolutely fine. I'm absolutely
Yes.
fine. You know, to be quite honest, like I said, coming from the midwifery side, there's no shameful word to me. But yeah, yeah.
It's interesting, because
I wanted,
Okay.
for me, I wanted to add, I mean, there's a word that was just thrown in, the word shame, and I wanted to throw in also the perspective of the church. And one of the things that I noticed, I also grew up in Zimbabwe. I grew up in the church. I went to church from an early age. I feel the church also suffered from the same challenges that were happening in the community and in culture. And some of it was sweeping under the carpet issues of abuse. So, and they were happening both in the church. If an uncle raped a niece and the father raped their daughter, culturally that's swept under the carpet because you don't want to expose the family. How are you going to get an uncle arrested? And the police are going to help us also on the subject of criminality within parents. Because you are fighting, you're bringing in the aspect of the law, but you're bringing in a strong culture that doesn't want to send a father, an uncle, a breadwinner, for that matter. How do you send a breadwinner to jail? And so you would have family relatives and mothers and other people sweeping all those things under the carpet. And so we also saw that growing up in church, the same sort of toxic masculinity, sweeping things under the carpet. And sometimes that would happen within even church structures and church leadership. And so that idea of sweeping things under the carpet, not exposing a relative, not exposing a church leader. And so that communicates to the young girl that you are an object that can be used. And that tells the young man growing up, you can use any girl. There are no consequences. I know that are going to come back to you. And the same thing that I saw, I remember growing up in church, I can almost take you to the spot where a young girl is pregnant at 14 and is brought up to the church to apologize and be shamed and to be made to feel like nothing, and there was no love and there was no support. And so I struggled with this idea of sweeping things under the carpet. And even up to today, I can tell you stories that are happening within families right now, where somebody has raped somebody within the family, and the families are fighting to have that circled and kept quiet. And it is those young girls that are growing up with the traumas that affect them in adult relationships and as mothers and as wives. And so the idea of us shaming young people, and so that is one thing, shaming young boys or young girls when they mess up or when they bring in negativity. For in church, one thing that I think we can correct was, number one, I grew up in youth ministries, young people, and we were almost told sex was a topic of married people. Wait until you get there. Either they're afraid we will do it, but guess what? Young people did it anyway. Hence they came back pregnant at 14, at 15, at 17. Whether you tell them or not, this is a physical body wired by nature. Some things put by God. If you don't instruct it, it's going to do nature. If you don't put a guidance, a support, it's going to do what it needs to do. And so for me, with the church needs to go back in addressing these things at youth level, at children's church level, bring in the same curriculum that's being talked about at school and package it in the children's church, in the youth ministry, and talk about these things openly. And also, I don't know how we're going to do this issue of shame and sweeping things under the carpet. How do you get an uncle arrested? How do you get a father arrested? How do you go to the police and to the law? How do you take away the shame of the family, the financial support that person was providing? How do you bridge all those gaps and and bring value to the young people and to the children. I'll finish by saying, for me, the way I feel, and we'll talk more about it in the future and going forward, the role of the church is to help young people develop a healthy perspective of their sexuality, so that when perversion comes, they can recognize it, irrespective of where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
I'll just
come to Tammy. Sorry,
I'll pick up from what he said in terms of where, how do we do it? I think we are all in the UK from a safeguarding point of view. What parents don't realize is we've got children that are, that are critical, that are empowered at school, that are aware of some of these things. So a child might go to school and then they disclose that this is what is happening. And then we get a referral. So sometimes we want to say, okay, we'll sweep it under the carpet, but we are dealing with children who also know their rights. So just as much as we want to make them, silence their voice, but some of them now are knowing how to raise their voices. So in terms of safeguarding, we need to understand that, we need to balance between adults. If an adult makes their choices, that's their choice. But we've got children that are growing up that need protection. So I always say a child cannot give consent. So what we find in our community at times, when a child becomes pregnant, the first question is, who was, maybe it's a brother-in-law. She did it. She was, I like using my language. Angati pesuka ndiye akatokonzera kuti bamukuru vamuite sei vauye kwari, like blaming and saying it's because of the way she was dressing. There's always that. We want as a culture to then blame it on the child, but a child is a child. A child cannot give consent, and it goes back again to learning. In terms of consent, we really need to learn about this subject. So I think in the future, it's a subject that needs exploration on its own.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pastor Nick and Tammy, for touching on the shame aspect of things. I think someone mentioned in the comment section not to just focus on young women as victims, because I think another thing that I've come up with in my area of work is young boys who, experience sexual violence from another man. And the shame of it comes to, if I disclose this, does this mean I'm saying I'm gay? And, or the shame of, you tell someone, they say, we don't talk about that here. And we have a lot of young boys, even grown men who've experienced it at a young age, but come here and they're struggling in silence. So I think it's such a big conversation that really needs a lot more time in itself. But shame is such a big thing to think about, especially in the community when talking about sexual health in particular. You've had your hand up for quite a while. Yeah.
I think that was supposed to go down. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Sorry.
Add one thing. How can we put it? It's I think people who are difficult to approach the police as well. I think we try and be as open and as honest as we can. Our role as community support officers is sort of like community based, but in all the times, the years I've been doing this job, no one's actually ever come up to me and said, "Oh, we think this is going on in this family, or this is going on." I think some of the times when people contact us, it's when referral comes through and stuff like that. That's my personal experience. I don't know if you, Christine, but for us, people do come forward. But I think it's, like you said, I think there's a bit of a stigma about talking to the police, and then there's concern what the knock-on effect is going to be, for family members, what support they're going to get. Is, for example, this relative or this friend going to be put in prison? I think people sort of are scared to come forward, and I think sometimes we need to sort of cross that barrier really and give people confidence they can actually approach us and talk to us about certain things. So I think that needs work as well, if that makes sense. It's a bit like sort of, as some of you guys were saying, you know, it's a taboo subject and some people are very concerned, and a lot of people, especially when it comes to county lines and stuff with grooming, the most important thing we say, it's not their fault this has happened. You know, when they get groomed, they get sort of gifts of various bits and pieces and lulled into a false sense of security, and that's when advantage is taken. So when we do a talk on county lines, the first thing we say is if you feel sort of this has affected you, or you know something or some which may have affected, speak to a trusted adult, speak to one of your you know, community leaders, or speak to us, because it's really important, and we're trying to get that word across, but it's difficult.
I think as a parent,
Sorry.
Gamu, do you mind muting yourself?
I think as well as like children, it's getting that bond with your child so they feel that they can talk to you about anything, even if it's taboo. And if you've got that closeness with a child, you may be able to notice subtle changes or how they're behaving. If they become very quiet, unusual, if they go out, change, you know, influences of peer groups, etc. There's little ways you can look after your children, but for us at the moment, we get a lot of sexual exploitation online, and it's parents having that guidance and putting things in place, knowing what your child is doing, because sometimes we've come across people that have gone online and they thought it was a friend, they were talking to a 14-year-old, but it was a lot older person, and this girl sent obviously inappropriate pictures of herself in the nude. It was reported to myself, and obviously it was investigated, and yeah, they're going on these games that, you know, 13, 14-year-olds that are going on. It's knowing as well to educate children that your body is yours, it's private, it's personal, and to not let anybody take advantage, because you could be online to anybody. It may not be somebody your child's age, it could be anyone that's starting to exploit and groom your child. So it's knowing what sites they're on and just keeping an eye that they're not exploited by any means, either online, etc. But having that closeness. My friend Rob, he goes to church all the time, so I can relate with getting that closeness, that bond, being able to talk to somebody, even if it's not a mum and dad or an aunt, uncle, so someone at church, a teacher. It's trying to reach out to children if they've got that sort of butterfly feeling, if something don't feel quite right, there are people out there that they can talk to. And like you said, with all the taboo through coming from Zimbabwe, so they can explain and come out how they feel or what's going on. Because like you said, it must be different from Zimbabwe and then coming to a culture here where things are more open and more discussed, and it's trying to bridge them barriers so the children of all different ages and cultures understand, so we can protect the children.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks,
sorry.
Dalitso. Sorry, I think I've seen maybe two parents that are really keen to talk. So before we go to the sort of like next part of this discussion, I think Gamu and I think it was Francis who wanted to just give some insight. So I just thought, because they've been raising their hand for some time and they're really keen to sort of give their view. And the whole point of this discussion really is to also hear from parents in terms of how can they overcome those barriers, how can they sort of like start that discussion. What are the fears? What are they uncomfortable about, and what can we do as the professionals that are on the panel to support the parents? So shall we start with Gamu? Gamu, if you can make it brief, that would be great, and then we'll move on to Francis.
Hi, good evening. Making it brief would actually be me doing very great, and it's a challenge. But thank you for this call. It's a very important discussion that you've brought to our community. And firstly, I would like to start saying that yes, we need to speak to our children. And for me, what worked was the triangle. So the triangle is from your breast going to your genital areas. And the message is to tell them that nobody's allowed to really see them or touch them, including myself and their father, because sometimes we exclude ourselves from that particular, details of saying no one else should touch them. It should include yourself, your partner, your siblings, nobody should. So that's the first message the children need to learn. And with mine, they have a mom like me from a young age of like 4 or 5. They all knew that they have a triangle that nobody touches. And yes, I name them as they are. And they know when I say, remember, nobody touches your triangle, they understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying about the triangle. And I included myself in the people that shouldn't be touching their private parts. I shouldn't be doing that. Once they've gone to an age where they are no longer requiring assisting to bath or anything, unless they're ill. And unfortunately, that went badly for me when my child needed to be examined by the doctor. He refused for the doctor to even look at his private, because like, no, nobody should, and you shouldn't, So I had to coax him and say, they really need to check what is wrong with you, And it was a proud moment for me, though, when he literally just refused straight off to the consultant. My child said, no one should. So it's one of those messages that we need to teach our children. Also, society. We come from a background where we call everybody, they are your uncle, they are your aunt. You should respect your uncles and your aunt. As we were raised by the village, and everybody is your relative in some sense of a form. We grew up in a massive community. But here, when we tell our children that everybody that they go to church with, their uncles and aunts, they literally would take what we tell them. You need to listen to them. You need to be an obedient child. You need to be whatever. We put our children in danger. And I am speaking from a point of a family that experienced sexual abuse of a minor. And this is one strong message. Those people are not their relatives. And we need to emphasize that so that our children won't be exploited by them. So we shouldn't. The church people, you need to pass these words around. They are not your relatives. Lastly, I come to you as parents, people on this call. When you hear somebody share about any exploitation sexually that have happened to them, do not go into teams of like, we don't believe you. Why is it 5 years? Why didn't you tell the police? Why are you coming with it on social media? Why didn't you say that? Because of all the way we respond when those messages come, we then close the avenue for people when they are able to share their experience, when they are able to talk about the trauma that went through. We stop them sharing that, and therefore we close that door for people to heal. And society needs to stop judging people. You were not there. Just because she said, I went out with my boyfriend, and then we went to his house, and then he asked for sex. At first I said yes, but then I said no. Everybody will be saying, well, why did you say yes in the first place? Why did you go to his house? And majority of the time, the girl child is blamed for whatever happens. And lastly, the thing that I put in the comments as well is because a lot of our mothers, our grandmothers, and some of you on this call never really consented to sex. And you end up with the men that you are with you today. You never really consented for that. You never consented to get married. You never consented to have that sex. You get coerced to sleep with a boy you liked, and then it becomes your problem. So unless you understand what has happened to you, that it was wrong, what happened to your grandmother was wrong, what happened to your mother was wrong, if we call it out, if we talk about it, then we are in a better position for our children to understand what consent is, for us to share with our children what consent is about. So unless we change the way we do things, our children are not related to everybody that looks like you and me. They are not related to everybody that they go to church with. They do not need to respect everybody that is their mom's friends or your dad's friends. Those people, usually, the police can account to this. Majority of the time, a child or any person will be raised by the people that knows them, the people that they trust. Those are the people that will exploit our children and ourselves as well. Some of us are being raped in our marriages, but we are not ready for that conversation because you are not ready to understand what real consent is when it comes to anybody's body. So that's all I wanted to say, but thank you for this conversation. And the police, I did put a comment in the comment regarding county lines. It's a subject that we also need to have a talk about. Thank you.
They're coming down. They're coming. It's already lined up. It's already lined up. Yes. I'll give the time back to Gamo. Sorry, I'll give the time back to Dalitso. Thanks.
Yes. I don't know, Rumbi, did you say Francis wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think Francis wanted to say something. And also in terms of, as we are moving along with the discussion, I really encourage you to, if something has already been mentioned, I understand the emphasis. Please try and avoid repetition, because we really want to start talking about further points in the discussion. So Francis, over to you.
Oh, thank you. This is quite a very interesting area, but I'm not going to touch on what other people have talked about. First of all, I just want people to recognize that the sexual health is a broad term. And the way we term sexual health here in the UK is different to how it is termed in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, they've got a tier line of sexual health. They've got the GU, which deals with the infection, which is separate, and then the SHR, which is different. So I'm more concerned on the sexual transmitted infections, because that is my specialty, that is the area I am. There is a concern of young people under the age of 15 who are now getting infected with STIs. By the age they get to 14, they've already been treated for gonorrhea. I've seen them in the clinic treating them for chlamydia. I've seen them in the clinic treating them for syphilis. We are talking about sex. We are talking about consent. But are we talking about safe sex? That is the area that most people are not focusing on. If they do engage into it, is it safe? What is safe sex? What do they know? What do our children know about that? Yeah, they can access our services from the age of 13. Yes, we do risk assessment on safeguarding and things like that. But as parents, if our children are we talking to them? And I know somebody talked about the children opening up and talking about, all those things about growing up. But we now need to be focusing on those things. So you can imagine a 15-year-old is coming for termination, is coming, has been treated for gonorrhea, is coming, has been treated for chlamydia, is coming, has been treated for PID, and the parents are not aware. You cannot pick those symptoms, you cannot pick what is going on, because we are not communicating with our children. And this is reality. Right now, there's a lot and lots of things which is happening. They are meeting people in different ways. The way we used to meet with our so-called boyfriend is completely different. Since the COVID, the ball game has changed. The landscape is different now. They are engaging in what they call the faceless sex. They don't even know the person they're having sex with. As long as they can consent, they don't even know their age, they don't even know where this person is coming from. They meet in different places, they have sex. There are so-called sauna places, they are called sex places where swingers, they don't ask about age or whatever. Our children are curious by nature. They are going into those places. Children are being groomed to do things, you know, so we've got to be really, really, really very, very careful. And when we are talking to our children, I'm quite happy to go any anatomy in the body, either in my vernacular language, which is shown, I can do that with no problems at all. I can talk in English about it with no problems at all. But you know, when it comes to sexual health, it's not something that you can take at the dinner table. It could be whether you're white, black, or anything. It's just that it has got its own complex things that it has, because it involves emotions, it involves, you know, the physical bit, it involves a lot of things. So that's why the perpetrators, they aim on the secrecy. Do not tell. So I can go over and over again, because I'm sure most of the points, the most important points have been mentioned already. But in the sexual health, we find that there are what we call friends which come along with the STIs, the county lines, the drugs, the alcohol, the grooming. All those things are part and parcels which come along. If you see a child, anyone under 16 who comes in, no matter how much you try and do the risk assessment, they would have been coached already. Because the other person who has given them the STIs, they told them to go to sexual health clinic. But these are the questions that I'm going to ask you. Do not talk about this, do not talk about this, do not talk about this. And they won't. They might slip a tongue, you know. I can give an example. A young girl comes in. You tell him my boyfriend is 15, which is, you know, according to the law, quite understandable. But then said, oh, he cannot come because he's working. Said, if he's 15, how is he working? So you need to have that professional, you know, it's a mother as well. If he says my boyfriend is working and he's 14, then you start questioning, how come a 14-year-old is working? No, he's not 14, because they're children. Then they start talking about those things. It's about picking on the clues, how they say things and why are they saying those things. That's all I can say for today, or else I'll talk for the whole night. Thank you.
I'll just come in a little bit in terms of the safeguarding. What I always say, like I've said, I think we need to break the ice with our children. I always say, let's be friends with our children. So if our children can't come to us, then they are going to have difficulties in disclosing all this, in talking about, you know, if a child, rather than just talking about don't have sex or that, I like your idea, you said safe sex. It's about going deep into that. What if this happens, these are the consequences. Our children understand consequences as well. So it's not just about talking about, you know, this is what is your body doing, but also talk about the consequences, that if you do this, this is likely to happen. So our children are well aware of what will happen to their bodies. So those are the things that we need as parents. It's very difficult, as you know, we were not raised this way. And I look at those that are coming from, you know, coming from Zimbabwe, they're coming to work in the country. We have our own issues. Remember, we are here to make money as well. So we've got difficulties in childcare. We've got difficulties in shifts. We are trying to manage working. Maybe you're a single parent. You've come to do dom care. You've got no one to leave your children to. So sometimes the teenagers are left on their own, or you're juggling between shifts as parents. So there's no time for you. One is tired, they come back home. So those are things that we need to recognize in our community, that there is also challenges that comes with immigration. So we need to be aware of those challenges that come with immigration, and how then do we tackle those issues. That's why we normally have to talk about education, because some people, they think it's okay. I've dealt with what we call intrafamiliar, you know, child sexual abuse, where a brother and sister, mom and dad were working all the time. They were 13 and 14. They were left together. What do? Sex. What happens? The girl is pregnant. And this is coming in the family. We are talking of blood brother and sister. Why? Because parents are working. And we know our economy as well, that it hasn't helped. So we are looking for money. We have black tax. We are having to look after other people. Those are the things that encompass the challenges that we face as immigrants. So it's also, how are we aware of those things? That even as we are working, finding time for the children, how do we then find time to be able to communicate, parent our children, so that we are there for them as well as they grow up?
Thank you so much, Tammy. I think a question that for the parents we should all really think about is who is raising our children. That should really stick in our heads, especially in a digital age where you don't know what your children are doing on their phones, on their laptops when you're not in the house. You don't know what they're watching on TV. And it's very different from back in the day where you knew that there was no social media, there was no anything. If they're at home, they're at home. But now when they're at home, they're exposed to the whole world. So we need to think about that. Rue, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I think you basically said what I wanted to say, because I was going to put the point that, like, the majority of the time, I think, I'm not a parent myself, but I think based on the community I come from, I think there's a lot of because of culture, there's a lot of, of course you're not doing it. You can never ever do that before you get married. But I think the one thing I can genuinely be upfront and honest with is your children are doing the things you're telling them not to do. And I was working in a sexual health clinic, and part of the things that I saw, again, from all age groups in the different communities as well, but most of the times there was someone from the Black community. She was even condemned. She said she was under the age of 16. I think she was about 14, 15, and her worry was, is my mom going to know? And of course there is confidentiality there, but she is also aware that she shouldn't be doing what she's doing because her mum is going to get angry or all of these things. So she has a fear of going to tell her mum or going to open up a conversation with her mum because of all these things. And there were a lot of complications attached to her case, and really and truly an adult should have been there with her to just guide her in all of this. But she got the help that she needed. My only thing is that I feel if you're leaving your children to be looked after or taken care by someone, it is, again, like the first point I made, that social media is raising your children at the end of the day if you're not opening up conversations. Like Francis said, it's not a discussion that you can have at a dinner, I don't know, during dinner, but also sometimes it can be, depending on the route you're taking it with. But I think it's just a matter of accepting that these things are happening. And when we do have these conversations, we are not telling you to tell your kids to have sex, but we are saying if they are to have sex, let it be safe. Let it be known that, okay, someone who is appropriate in the age can talk to me. I can go to them. If something is to happen that is going to traumatize me, that's going to worsen mental health, whatever, I can go to an adult and talk about these things, because you don't want later on to see that something has happened and it's damaged you. And then now when your parents find out about this later on, it's now questions. It's now, oh, why didn't you talk? But how can you talk if you don't have an open space in the beginning. So yeah.
Thank you so
Can I
much.
just come in there?
I was going to pass
just
back to Pastor Nick, sorry, because he's had his hand up for a while. Then I'll come back to you.
Oh,
Bob.
okay.
No
All right. I
worries.
wanted to tie in the point that she's just mentioned about, when we discover it's too late already. We just need to face the fact that we are living in a society where there is a lot of STIs, and we need to accept the fact that some of our children, we get back to them in a situation where we had already exposed ourselves, and some parents have not actually opened up to their children that they were victims of this type of scenario. So by the time I find out that it's already too late, or because I can give an example of my nephew who was not told until he finished his A levels and he was going to university, but he had already, involved himself in unprotected sex. So you can imagine how many other girls were affected by an era where us as parents, we have not is honest conversation with our children. So just to add on, sorry.
Nice, thank you. I'll pass back to Pastor Nick.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted also to add, I mean, one of the things in working with parents that I believe all of us, I've got a 15-year-old boy that I'm also having difficult conversations with. One of the things I will talk for myself that I accepted or had to change in my mindset, number one, is to accept that the world, especially the social media world, is 10 times ahead of me, if not 100 times ahead of me in how it's influencing my children. So the first thing I had to do was to educate myself. I may not know the lingo, the Gen Z, and the whatever, but in understanding the impact, the avenues, in understanding that when it's playing roadblocks, and understanding, the people that are out there that will prey on them. And so we cannot afford to be ignorant, if I were to humbly put it that way. We cannot afford to still maintain a style or a culture that raised us. And our children are being raised in a different way. So it was educating myself. But the second thing that I got rid in my mind was this parental idea that my child is innocent. He's not going to do that. He tells me anything. That is one of the fastest way to losing that connection between what's happening in your child. That assumption that, oh, my child, they tell me everything. They are innocent. They're just a nice, the 10-year-old is the new 18. 6, 7 is the new 17. What we were exposed to at 18 is what our 7 and 8-year-olds are dealing with. So this idea of, I think we need to get rid of being naive, to assume they tell us everything, to assume they are innocent, and just assume I am going to get involved. But also, I think for me, I one of the things I've had with my son, which I found it difficult, was being open with my own struggles as a father, with my own mess, with my own mistakes, and also more than that, and I mean it in the sense of also healing myself and being an example. So healing myself, because sometimes we project the same trauma that we were raised with, either in the way that we react, in the way that if our child tries to open up, much of our African culture will lash out in anger, because we only hold the idea you shouldn't be doing that. But guess what? Whether you like it or not, it's happening. So just picking up that anger, and there's many parents, African parents, social services has been involved, because only reaction we know is just reacting in anger and punishing, but not engaging in a conversation. And so it's to recognize that, create a space of safety where they will make some mistakes. How do you come in with yours? How do you come in with your own examples and create that safe environment? But we need to throw out of the window that they are street, they're innocent, nothing is happening. And also for me, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is I'm no longer so much obsessed about my child getting A's and being some doctor and some engineer. I'm now obsessed about the men that they are becoming, because that doctorate will mean nothing if he grows up to be an abusive boy and abusive husband. That PhD or masters will mean nothing to your daughter or to your child if they start sleeping around at 15 and being groomed and being in pornography and being in drugs. You will spend time in courts, in the hospital, that yes, we want them to achieve. But I think let us prioritize the men and the women that they are becoming, so that our own children don't become a burden to the criminal justice system or become cases in the hospital system. And I need money, and it has been mentioned. I'll close with this point. And I need money. I've got shifts to go to. I've got work to go to. But guess what? You have to come to a point. My child's life and future matters more than another shift. I'll figure out the shift. I'll figure out the money. Their future, their life. Because if you ignore that, you will make a shift today, and you will pay more in the future. You can make an extra £100 today, or will pay with a 70-year-old being in jail for raping another young girl, because we were not there to teach them boundaries, to teach them how to conduct themselves. So I think we need to kind of like turn back and say, we have to be intentional. We have to be involved. We cannot be naive and just throw everything out of the window and pretend as if your child is exposed to, which they are, or they're involved in the worst thing, and say, where do we start? How do I begin to build the man and the woman in you, other than just focused on career and them achieving, which is very important, but who they are becoming is important more than maybe the grades or some of the things that they're achieving.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pastor Nick. I think when you talked about impact, the impact of not talking about sexual health is such a big thing. I think in a world where we have Andrew Tate, Body Blue, who for a lot of young boys, they're learning about masculinity from men who are sexual exploiters. And to the extent that I think even when you read in the paper, there's an article I read last week which was saying that young boys are writing essays in primary school about how Andrew Tate is their role model. So I think we really need to think about, if we're not having these conversations, they'll find someone else to model what they think is normal. And that is so dangerous. And I think we talked about, you know, the impact is massive. There's incest that's been mentioned here. There's, you know, there's HIV, STIs, there's a lot of things, teenage pregnancies. I guess what I want to ask the panelists is, like, what practical tools or conversations do you recommend for parents who are listening? We've talked about, you know, consent, but I think there's more than just consent that needs to be talked about.
Dalitso, before the panel sort of jumps in, I think there's a lot of wisdom from other parents as well that are on the platform. I would strongly encourage you to share some of your tools in the chat, so that we can also share it widely, because I've received so many messages that, you know, if there's a recording and everything else, I know that some of you are well equipped on this subject. So if you can also share some of the practicalities and practical tools, it'll be really helpful in the chat. And what I'll do is, like, our team will follow up with you so that we can share it widely. Thank you. You can go ahead, the panel.
Thank you, Rumbi. So yeah, so just, I don't know, someone talking.
For myself, like I said in the beginning, I create guides, conversation starters. I'm actually creating a jar. What can I call it? Like, you know, just a jar, but it has questions in it. And then it just you can just pick it up and you read the question, and mum and children or child, whatever, dad there as well, they can just discuss that question. You can do it once a week, once a day, in the morning, at night, whatever you want to do. But because most of my content or guides, they're for all age groups, but my focus is usually on the preteens and teens sort of content when it comes to the guides. So yeah.
Thank you, Rue.
Rue, do you mind just putting all your handles, whether there's a website, whether it's on Instagram? I do love the Instagram. So please put in
Yeah.
the chat so that, because there are already some of the guests who are requesting for that information. So if you can just add the links to the chat, that'll be great.
Okay, I'll put my Instagram. Thank you.
I also put in the charts the NSPCC, the PANTS work. It's very clear. It just explains who can touch your body. So the child understands in terms of who can touch their body, who's allowed to touch their body. That's what we're talking about in terms of a child understanding who can touch their body. There is also the Brooks traffic light system as well. So it's also about talking about what's green, what's red, what does red mean? So that's also another tool it's a visual aid with children for them to understand as well, the do's and don'ts. So most of the things that we do, I think mine will be from a professional point of view, where I'm going to explore with the child. I've got lots of resources to try and get the child to. I'm also looking for information from the child. So there are some resources that I use, even just a doll. You don't have to use something that's very, that's out of this world. A doll in the house with a child who's a little bit younger, for them to understand, tell me more about this doll. What does this doll, represent, their parts as well. So anything that can help the parent and that child to understand in terms of their body parts.
Okay. So there's resources that are being shared in the chat. I think someone asked if they can share documents. You can share documents, because like Rumbi said, we're all experts in our own right as parents, so feel free to share them there. I don't know if, before we move on to the Q&A section, I want to give time for the parents that had a lot of questions earlier. Is there any last points that any of the panelists wanted to stress around this topic?
Yeah, I think there are some topics that we didn't touch a lot. So topic like pornography. It's again another topic which is around sexual health and how that also has an impact on our children. So, the access to that and how we can try as parents with parental controls. I always talk about parental controls. We've got Sky, we've got, anything that we have in the house to make sure that our children don't access things that are above their age limit. So be aware of that and what they're accessing. And what does that mean? It gives them a false sense of, of the reality of sex. So they need to understand the impact of pornography. We as parents as well, sometimes we've dealt with parents who are also involved in that and the impact it has on the child. Remember, as parents, we are role models. So whatever we do, our children learn from us. So the behaviors that we present to our children will learn from us in terms of, moving forward. So things like that. And just a conclusion in terms of the church and things that are taboo, because I still deal with parents who've told me, when I've gone to an African family and they're saying, but you're also African, that we don't talk about these things. Oh, I don't need to know my child's boyfriend until they're getting married. And I've said, what? And they said, yeah, we go to church, we don't talk about those things. And then I have to say, do you know that your child, this is what they've done? They've got a sex video that they've done. You don't know. They are dating a boy who is a child of a well-known drug dealer in the area. But because you've put your, this hat off, I don't want to know, this is how I was raised. You know, as a church, we say this. I think I was reading in the chart, they I think she smiles Zimbabwe or something. She's very, I can see her passion in terms of we shouldn't do this. The laws are, you know, are saying we should do this. We need to make it clear that sex before marriage, you need to go back to the basics. But those basics, are they reality in our world? Because we also grew, they were up in our time, there were risks. But the risks that we are finding these days, they are different to our own risks. We could jump over the window and go out, but we were still not finding what we are finding these days. Out there are people waiting for our children. So just as much as we want to be rigid and say we need to go back, we need to be given this as parents, is that real? So let's go back to reality and see how can we support our children, you know, without making them feel that we are raising them we want to raise our children in our how we were raised. So we need to mesh the two to know that the way we were raised is going to be different with the way we are raising our children. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. Has anyone else got anything else to add?
I think Francis and Gamu. Okay, I think Pastor Nick was going to go. Then we'll go to Francis, then Gamu.
Yeah. I would just quickly add that I appreciate all the resources and I'm going to be jumping on them that have been shared. For me, I'll share for myself. Like I said, I've got a 15-year-old boy. One thing I've done in the last 3 or 4 months is to talk to him openly about pornography, the addictive nature of it, and how it will destroy how he views girls. How you can open up doors to other addictions of drugs and alcohol and other things, and and also to model for him how I treat his mother, and to know how to respect and value women, and where I've had the space to talk to friends that have got girls, and we chat with others, and in an understanding that the sense of identity, the sense of value, that girls do not need to perform to boys and in order to be liked and address these things of pornography. I watched the recent I sat with my son and we watched the recent Netflix series. What was it? Is it Adolescence? Yeah. And went through all those points, and I was asking questions. So what is it being a man? So is it dominating girls? Is it being a bully? Is it sleeping around? Is what do you do when your friends are pressuring you that you're in that sex? You know, like as if it's a trophy that you need to provide, you know, and like his sense of identity, and address all those things in that Netflix series, you know, how he sees himself, how he sees women, how he sees girls, how he deals with the pressure from other boys that are doing it, how he must not be pressured into feeling like he's left out. And I think what we can do is up our intentionality and relationships, and draw and borrow what we can borrow from our bringing and our culture, but realize, obviously, as it has been said over and over, we live in a different world. Our engagement is going to go in a step further, a step closer. I pick them up from school. I'm asking intentional questions. How are you? What's going on? How did that make you feel? You know, your friend has got a girlfriend. How do you feel? Do you feel you need to have one? Why? What is the purpose? But that intentional communication, relationship, involvement, and I think we can do our part. You know, they will have to navigate their way in the world. But I believe if you can plant that seed and not shut them out, because you can shut them out at 13, 14 at primary and secondary. But guess what? The day they get to university, 100 miles away from you, they are in every club, in every party, smoking everything that they can smoke, because that exposure, that conversation was not dealt with at home. I think let's be intentional, talk about it, all those things. And I watch movies with them. My 8-year-old, we watched the movie about emotions, and I was talking about anger. I talked to my 15-year-old about anger. It's one of the things that then couples with pornography, couples with this, it ends up in, yeah, look, why are you angry? You know, like, why are you feeling? How do you channel that anger? How do you channel that frustration? You know, how do you channel your feelings? You know, you may feel like you want to have sex. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you go out, run there and do it. And emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, and deal. So I've moved away from just reacting as an African parent and lashing out and shutting the door, and invite them in and invite myself into their space and seeking to understand and create a safe space for them. And sorry, finally, I would say, I've been a pastor. And I'll give one final example without being preachy. The prodigal son, when they fail, let's welcome them back. Starting from the day-to-day smallest thing. When they fail a subject, have a way of welcoming them. I love you more than your performance. I love you more than your results. When they mess up, because it is also dealing, they will mess up in dealing with these emotions. They will make mistakes, but it's also how we create an environment of grace, forgiveness, restoration, and reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for touching on pornography. I know we haven't had much time on it, but there's a study that was recently done. It's called Everyone's Invited, which collated experiences of primary school students who experienced sexual violence. And one particular story stuck in my head. It was, I think, a young girl as young as 10, her first kiss. And straight after, the young boy strangled her because he said, when I watch pornography, that's what happens. So I think it's so important to really have these conversations about pornography because it's everywhere. We can't ignore it. If you just pretend it's not there, children will still watch it. So just wanted to touch on that. So I'm just going to move on to, there's a lot of hands up. I don't know, Rumbi, if there's any other questions in the chat that I've missed.
I think Francis wanted to speak, and I think Gamu wanted to speak. Then we'll move on to the next segment, Dalitso, after those two.
Okay, I think we've got one more question from Ed.
Yeah, I think Pastor Ed.
Yeah, so
also Pastor Ed. Yes. So, yeah. Apologies. Yeah.
Nice. So Francis, over to you.
Thank you. I think the other areas that we seem to have not mentioned is about sexuality and gender. As African parents, immigrants in this country, it's another area that we really, really need to talk about with our children. How do we react if our children comes and tells you that this is the sexuality I want to be? It's against, we've never experienced it in our lives and everything else. So it's something that we really need, maybe in the next sessions, to really open and talk about it and how to be able to embrace. Because this is coming on, whether we like it or not, whether we believe in it or not, it is there. Sexuality is there, and you know, gender alignment and all those things which are coming in. There's so much titles which are coming in, and children are starting to use that, and we should be able to understand what it means and what it's going to say to us. Sorry about this. Switch off my phone. Sorry. Nice. Then the other things that I needed also to talk about, I think Pastor Nick mentioned about pressure, peer pressure. There is social pressure. There's also blame cultures and all those things. There are other areas that we need to explore more and be able to equip ourselves as the parents, as also as professionals, and also as the community on how to embrace if things are, you know, happening in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Gamal?
Hi, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak again. Thank you for everybody who has contributed so far. And what I wanted to add was these conversations, when we have them with our children, the onus is not just on the mother to impart a lot of these lessons. Our husbands, our brothers, our fathers, you also need to engage in these conversations with your children, with your siblings, so that it is not just the mother that is burdened to have to impart all of this to the children. And unfortunately, in our society, the women takes a lot of the load on things like this. So we want our brothers, our sisters, our colleagues that are on this call to know that this is not only for the woman to discuss with the children, it's a conversation for everybody.
Mhm.
So that's what I wanted to add. And I also wanted to add that the church, when it comes to sexuality, please allow the children, if they feel safe to come and talk to you about their sexuality, do not close the door for them. Let them come out and speak what they need to speak. If they are confused about their sexuality, please open that door. And as parents, let's keep an open mind, because we are not our children, they are themselves. And as a parent, even having a pregnant teenager or a boy child that have made a girl pregnant, it doesn't mean that you've failed. You haven't failed anything, because there isn't set guidelines on how you're supposed to parent your children. We don't have a guideline for that. So whatever comes, please be open-minded and speak with your children. I feel sorry for my own children, because I speak about everything and anything. And sexuality, sexually transmitted infections, literally give them pictures. Look at it. Look how it looks like. And I scarred the hell out of my children. But it's the only way that I felt, you know what, I have to show them what happens when things like this happen, because you can preach about this is sexual health, blah, blah, blah. When you see, sometimes it helps you understand the knowledge that you already had that you hadn't seen before. So I do show them the gory pictures of sexually transmitted illnesses so that they can understand what it looks like. And also, I want to quote Menstrualbae Rue, who's on the call. I want to talk about her father. Her father is a man of two girls. He doesn't have any boys he didn't have any boys. So he has two girls. And what he said, he calls me Mbuya. Mbuya Gamu, I am everything for these children. I have to be their friend. I have to be their advisor. I need to listen when things are not going right for them. I have to be there for them. And that's how he has raised Ruvimbo and Ruvimbo's sister. The father is heavily involved with what they do. If they want to go out, their father can take them out, and they know they can call him at any given time of the day to say, Daddy, come and take me, I'm stuck. That's the way he has raised his children. And it's commendable for a man in our society to do that. So I implore on the other men that are on this call that the onus is on all of us, not just the women. And let's do the right thing so that we can raise our children safely, and for them to understand safe sex, and that, you know what, it is going to happen one day or whatever. So we need to teach them how to be safe.
Mhm. Thank you. I think Pastor Ed, you had your hand up. Yeah, thanks. No? Okay.
We
Hello.
probably. Oh, are
Hello.
you there, Pastor Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there. Sorry. I just wanted to add that this is quite an important webinar, and it's really good that we've come up with. But I hear a bit of resources that are flying around. I think one of the speakers mentioned that they've written a book on one of the topics. I think it will be important to highlight those resources, because I think mostly people is because they don't have the resources. They need to get educated, as you're saying. When someone has not grown up in the system, for example, they default to what they are used to, not because they want to, but that's the only thing they know. So I think it's quite important to actually highlight those resources and how people can access, and we to have a culture of also writing these things down, because I think, from our background, we don't have many books, we don't have many resources that people can access to actually educate themselves on how they can navigate. Most people are struggling with this. Most parents are struggling with this, but they don't know, how to access. And the resources that are there, they cater for people who grew up here, who know the system, But we need someone probably to write about, okay, you know, people that have come from Zimbabwe, you know, that are working. How do they navigate these things? How do they prioritize to just make sure that they're not losing a generation? And we also need to remember that the children that we are raising now, they are going to be parents as well. So all this will be lost in translation if we just don't create those resources like writing books or creating programs so that there is continuity, so that, you know, in years to come when we are not there, our children are raising their children in a certain way that will help future generations. So I just wanted probably to mention that we really need to gather this, and also this particular webinar. I know, Rumbi, you do a lot in this area, but we also probably need to set up probably programs that are for continuous education, continuous improvement, because I think it's because people don't know. That's why we are having this kind of problems in raising kids, not only sexual health, but in all other areas. But sexual health is one of the most important. So I think that was the contribution I wanted to make.
Thank you, Pastor Ed. Just to make a point around this. So this project is going to go on for 2 years. So as I said at the beginning, we started at 6. Some of you were not able to join at that point, but this project is going to go on for 2 years. And acknowledging that we are working with a community that has just we would say we are a newly settled community in the UK, and it's important that you know, that we have a prolonged program that really focuses on some of these taboo subjects. I know that there are a lot of authors as well. I've seen quite a few authors that are in our midst. I think Rumbi Dalitso is one of the authors. We've got Pastor Nick Dube. And if you do know any sort of like authors that are touching on these subjects, please do let us know, and we'll be holding these panel discussions for the foreseeable future. So this is just not a one-off discussion that we are having today. It's going to be a continuous discussion, but we really appreciate and thank you for your contribution. Over to you, Dalitso.
Thank you. Before I move on, I'll just give Tammy the floor. You've had your hand up, and then I'll move on to the next part.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on child protection and safeguarding. Most of the times we don't realize that our harmful parenting can also impact on our children's way of thinking or way of doing things. I've noticed that in our communities, sometimes there's domestic abuse. So whilst in your relationship as parents, you are focused on your relationship and the shouting and the arguing, your child is also being loved by other people. So let's also, you know, work on our relationships. I think that's something that within our community, we struggle. Our relationships are very, very important. Sometimes we struggle to have healthy relationships, but they are very important in guiding our children, because without those healthy relationships, our children can also get into a lot of things. Then we don't have time with them. Then we are focusing, you know, on that. And I've noticed, I've worked with children who sometimes you ask them, how did you end up getting into this? And they said it was a way of coping. So parents were involved in, you know, hitting each other. There were lots of domestic abuse, and this child was on their own, and they were now focused online, and they were then addicted, you know, to pornography. A lot of things was happening within them, but it's because parents were not available. Parents, there was domestic abuse within their relationship. And when parents separate, I always say in our community, we struggle with co-parenting. So when we separate, then the parenting is left to whoever has the child, and most of the times it's the mother. Then we've got the father who is saying, you know, I want to fix the mother because we are not together. She's going to raise the children on her own. But remember, the child needs also a parental figure, a father figure, you know, who's that father figure who's doing something with the child? Because as parents, it's mostly like what Gamu said, us as mothers who are, you know, involved in this. And even if you look at this webinar, I think you can count a few men that are here. Most of the things that we do, parenting, you know, webinars or even workshops, I've found that it's mostly women who are coming, but where are our men? So men need also to come in, and even if there's separation, let's co-parent, let's have that consistent parenting. Children need consistent, and once they're consistent, they hear the same message rather than, you know, having a disjointed parenting structure. So that's what I wanted to say in terms of the safeguarding in child protection.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fatasha. That's quite important to touch on. I think Pastor Nikki also mentioned earlier the importance for men, particularly, to model you want your children's relationships to look like. It plays such a big part of it. We're just going to move on to just for closing reflections, mostly. For each of the panelists, in 1 minute, what's one key takeaway you want parents to leave with today? We've discussed a lot of things, but what's one particular thing you want them to leave with today? I'll start with Tammy.
Learn. Because we are coming from a culture where things are done differently. So just, you know, learn, be open, take your time to learn everything that we are talking about. They won't work if you're not learning. So you need the knowledge, learn, and be open to learning. I cannot emphasize enough to say learning is very important.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add on that deliberately to jump on the word learn and add on after learning, get involved. Whether you like it, whether you are there, things are happening to your children. Whether you're involved, whether you choose to hide under a job, under the carpet, things are hiding. Either you pay the price of learning and being involved, and plant that seed and allow God to let it grow. And, you know, get involved in the conversation, get involved in what they're dealing with, find the space. Some of our children, especially the teenagers, they will not allow you crawl under somewhere. Find a spot, find a space during pickups, during a holiday. Get in your word, get in your love, get in there, because whether you like it or not, things are happening around them, in them, they're being exposed. Let the voice of you as a parent be louder than the voice of social media and anyone else. Let your voice be the loudest in all this noise.
Thank you. Ruth?
I think for myself, what I would want the parents to take away from this workshop is that your children are not expecting you to have all the answers, but I think the most important is that they want to know that they can come to you without fear, without judgment, because I think, again, you have your different upbringings, but if there is that place of trust, if the trust is built, they can definitely come to you, and I think that's the most important part about it. It's not about being perfect. It's not about knowing what was done in 1975 and now we're in 2025. It's about your child, and yes, as a parent, you are allowed to have your own opinion, but I think at the center of it all, your child is supposed to be in the center, whether it's going to be uncomfortable. Like I said, I'm not a mother, but definitely I have seen it with my parents. There are things that I go to talk to with my mom, with my dad, because we have now built the trust. They don't have the answers, and sometimes they may even send an auntie, like my mom's younger sister, to talk to me because they're not prepared to answer that question, which I can respect. So I think it's more about building trust, not knowing all the answers, but making sure that you're not imposing judgment and fear into your children. You're welcoming them and you're learning, like what Tammy and Pastor Nick said, learning and educating at all times. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara?
Oh yeah, I'll just say be visible, be approachable, and do not let the world mold your child. I know it takes a community to raise a child, but also the community can also be abusive to the child. So have that close relationship. And there is nothing wrong in making ourselves case studies. If there's anything that we have done in our lives and we've learned from our mistakes, it's okay to share those mistakes with them. They can learn from real life situations. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Robin, Christine, is there anything, a takeaway from your professional experience that you want the parents to leave with today?
I would say everything that people have been saying today has been brilliant. You know, try and build up a relationship with your children and relatives and stuff like that. But also one of the key things, and I think it was mentioned earlier, is educate yourself as well. Because for me, and I'm being really honest here, when I had a sex talk with my dad, and he was a vicar, and he's 87 now, bless him. But mine was just a leaflet left on my bed. That was not, you know, it was, how can I put it? When I went to school, it was a magazine was handed round and you chatted with your best mate, any experiences you had. So obviously now with social media and stuff like that, as people said earlier, things are going on behind the scenes that you may not know about. And I think it's this day and age where you've got to learn social media, you've got to learn way youngsters and young people sort of talk about things and the words and language that they use. And also, you know, again, peer pressure is very big. You know, as someone said, you know, your best mate's got a girlfriend, or boyfriend, how does that make you feel? You know, we have issues as well where people are born a girl or a boy, and as they get older, you know, they don't want to be a boy and a girl anymore. So a lot of things need to be embraced, and I think people just need to be open and just accept things. Educate yourself, definitely.
Thank you.
And just basically, I don't know, watch your child if there's any different changes in their behaviours. You know their peer groups, because if you know where their peer groups they're hanging out with, what they're doing, because a lot of parents think, oh, they're just out, but don't know what their children are up to, and it is a lot of peer group pressure, and there are people out there that will exploit your children. Even we've had here in Northamptonshire, people going into McDonald's and saying to kids, you know, can we have your phone number, I'll buy you McDonald's. Well, why would an older adult or an older person want your phone number and your details? And it's protecting your children if they change behaviours, they're staying out late, they're hanging around with older children, etc. You know, just to be wary that alarm bells may be going off, that they may be becoming exploited or groomed by others. So it's just sort of learnt behaviours as well from yourselves as a parent, that whatever how you behave at home, your children are learning them behaviours when they become adults as well. So it's really listening, and with social media, it does open a whole can of worms, and it's just knowing what your child is basically doing all the time. But I have enjoyed this group, and I think it's quite beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got Linda and Rue. You both have a minute each. So I'll go to Linda first.
Linda, is it me?
No, there's another Linda.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh,
I think
thank you.
it's Ruth's mom.
Oh, Ruth's mum. Okay.
Yeah, it's Linda, Bruce, mom. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, for me, I think I'll take, I'm still learning, and I think it's more of listening and having that time all when you have the time. Because sometimes our kids, I'll take an example of my Rue, like now I'm coming from a long day, and she'll come and say, Mom, Mom, I want to speak to you. That time is not the time. So sometimes afterwards, maybe they'll take it that Mom is tired. Now we're learning, and it's knowing your child, I think, because sometimes we as parents we seem to know our children, but we don't know them. So now I'm learning to know my children better at my age, and it's so sad that I'm a prison nurse, and I was hearing everything what everyone has been saying. Having to admit, imagine an 18-year-old in prison saying, I'm gonna be a lifer, as in whatever he's done, I'm gonna rot in prison. How I don't know to explain the feeling as a mother. It is so emotional to the point where sometimes you get up and just say, can I just have a time? Because you can't cry in front of them, but that feeling as a parent, you have that feeling. So as parents, I think having time with our kids, things do happen, but obviously it's not our fault. Sometimes we need that time with our parents, with our children, to listen. And I think for us, it's more of listening and having that time to talk to them. Thank you very much for this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Linda. And then Ruth?
Oh, what I wanted to say was also, I think there was someone who said to also learn and get to understand social media. My one point to that is also know about emojis. Those emojis don't just mean what you see on your phone, they mean a lot more. It's coding, it's a lot, but do get to understand what emojis mean. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's a YouTube about it. If I find, I'll share with Rumbi. But just do get to understand what the emojis mean when your children are talking to their peers and their peers are talking to them and all of that. But thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the emojis one is a big one, especially in this day and age. So I'll emphasize that. But I think just to round up, from the three key takeaways for me that stood out was learn, really educate yourself as a parent, because you have to know for you to be able to raise your children in this world. Secondly, create a safe space. Your children need to be able to feel safe to come to you. And also make sure you have informed parenting, but that can only happen if you learn. Those are the three things. And also, I think just to remind everyone, there are resources in the chat, so please take time to review them. I think Rumbi will probably circulate some later as well. I just want to say thank you so much to the panelists and everyone for coming. Rumbi, I don't know if you want to touch briefly before we finish on the next event as well.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Dalitso, for facilitating this informative discussion. And again, thank you to the panelists and to all of our guests. We really appreciate you being very open-minded. One of the things that because I'm the one who wrote the project, I was personally aware of was that the subject is a taboo subject. And we had to find a way to engage our community to talk positively about this subject. I really want to appreciate you coming as guests with an open mind, sharing your expertise, sharing your thoughts, fears. We really do appreciate that. In terms of the next event, how we are going to take this project forward. The whole point of having this discussion was, one, to prepare you for when African Youth and I start having the discussions or start having workshops with your young people about sexual health. We didn't want to catch you unaware as parents, and as a lot of you were saying that our children are very curious, and one of the things what we tend to find actually as mentors from African Youth Rise is that when we have a discussion with your young people, or when we engage in a certain subject, the next thing they are engaging with you as parents. So we didn't want you to be caught unaware, knowing the sensitivity, knowing the taboo around the subject. We wanted to really engage with you and also find out from you. We've created a survey as well, follow up in terms of to tell us actually what is it you want us to support you with. How do you want us to move forward with the topic? So in a couple of weeks' time, we are going to hold another workshop. We will bring in one of the panelists depending on availability, and they'll really sort of like delve deeper into the expertise that they are. So if it's Barbara, she will come in and she will talk from her own expertise as a teen midwife, as a sexual health sort of like specialist, similarly to Pastor Nick, to Dalitso who works on policy, to the police, outline some of the trends that they see from our community. Because I think Linda actually touched a little bit about that. Some of the trends and some of the stories that are sort of like coming out from our community. And we need to stop to be in denial about what's actually going on in our community and really talk about it upfront. So follow us on our social media. We'll advertise a lot of the events that are happening, and we'll reach out to all of you. Actually, we've got all of your email addresses, so we'll reach out. But yeah, it's to really thank everyone for really keeping an open mind and to keep the conversation going. I think this is one of the most well attended sort of like workshops that we've had that we've held for parents. So we really appreciate you. Continue to support us. I really want to sort of like also appreciate the church for being present, because I think what I've seen, the church has tended to shy away from this. But I'm so glad that Pastor Nick and his colleagues have stepped up to have this conversation. So we really appreciate you, and all the parents that have shared their tips and their practical tips for us to move this conversation forward. We really appreciate you, and thank you so much. And have a very good night. And you definitely hear from us soon. I think there was someone from Smile Zimbabwe. I think you wrote quite a lot in the chat. I wasn't able to keep up because I was trying to also listen to the conversation, but we'll be happy to have a conversation with you. And if you are an expert in any of the subjects that we've explored tonight, please reach out to us. I'll put our email address and we'll be able to take the conversation forward. So that's a good night from us, and thank you, everyone.